What up, guys? Welcome to the Hangout Podcast, where we hang out. And today I'm hanging out with none other than the GOAT, as we call him, of gospel live recording. I think of just live recording in general. And I do stress the with two E's, Danny
Oh man,
Duncan. Man, we've been trying to have this conversation for
John.
a couple of years.
Here, and here we are. We're finally, 2 years later, we made it happen.
We're gonna make some other stuff happen, and we've been talking about.
I hope so. I'm all in. Let's
Community definitely wants to hear it, man. So for those who just don't know, who Danny Duncan is, give us like the synopsis. Like, who is Danny Duncan? Like, tell us some of your accolades, because I could read off all music, credits that go all the way back to like 1989, at least as far back as I could see. But I'm pretty sure there's something before that, man, because you've been a part of it.
Now.
Oh man, but you've been a part of so many iconic records with very iconic artists across your career, and so. Man, who is Danny Duncan? Like, who is that and who is that?
Man, so I was going to start that. I would, accolades would not be a part of that conversation. If I was going to say it, I am someone who just incredibly loves music.
Wow.
I love people. I love people being able to express what is in their heart and the ideas that they have in their mind and be able to express that creatively. I grew up loving music, playing music, taking lessons,
Really?
playing in bands, just playing. That was my childhood, and it wasn't like I was wondering what I would do when I grew up. It's like that's the only thing that I thought of. Like there was nothing else. I just wanted to be making music, creating music, and I didn't even know what that.
Wow.
I didn't know what it meant.
So what did you start playing? What did you start out playing?
Keyboards. Started playing keyboards.
Wow. So Danny Duncan is a keyboard player, if you did not know that.
I played saxophone in the band.
Wow.
And so played a few different instruments. I went to college. I was a music major.
Wow.
Studying arranging and composition. So I did some of that. I started, even some composing. I read full-on orchestra charts, and so that's where a lot of the music background and music theory knowledge comes from.
Wow. And of course, that plays into the whole composition of who you are as a.
It does. So I just loved. I love music, and I love the creative process of it. So, when I got out of college, I moved to Nashville. Didn't have a clue what exactly I was doing yet. I didn't know a single person, but I thought, I'm going to just get among other creative people and find out what that meant. Wow. And I knew that meant I wanted to be creating music somehow. Wow. Started off, I played keyboards in a couple of bands.
Now, what year was this?
This was in 1989.
Okay.
It was right after I graduated from college.
And what college?
And I went to Samford University in Birmingham, Alabama.
Nice, yeah.
So I moved to Nashville, started playing keyboards in a band. I knew that I really wanted to be in the studio somehow because I earlier, like when I was in high school, I went into a recording studio in my hometown of Montgomery, Alabama.
So
I'm from Montgomery, Alabama originally, yeah.
So my sister is she's the percussion chair at I think it's the University of Alabama, the one that's in Montgomery. What's the one that's in Montgomery? Alabama U.
Probably so. Auburn University in Montgomery. There's probably
the Hornets,
University.
I think it is.
Oh, that's Alabama State.
Alabama State.
Yeah.
I couldn't think of it. She's gonna kill me for that. But
oh no.
she's the percussion chair at Alabama State.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, she's down there doing that. Been doing that for.
They have a great music program.
Yeah, that she fell in love with it so much that she decided to.
And I still have family in Montgomery and go there all the time.
Wow.
So
you got from hometown, Sanford.
hometown, I went into, when I was in high school, I had a band that I played with. We went into a local studio there. First time I'd ever walked in the door of a recording studio, and experienced like putting down our ideas and multi-tracking and and creating layers, and I just fell in love with the process of it. A lot of people fall in love with like the performance side of it. Being able to sit there and create and take the time and create with sounds, like listening to sounds and what does this sound say? Really get into the whole art of the sound of it. Man, I fell in love with that process. So when I moved to Nashville, I knew, it's like, man, if there's any way I can be in the studio, that's what I want to do. So I also learned along the way that it's a little difficult to just move to Nashville and suddenly you're in the studio every day. It just, maybe for some people, and especially at that time, because, we were still recording on tape at that time. Really, it was, and the studio, it was one of those things where in Nashville there was a good group of session players, and they were like the first call people. They did all the sessions. They were the people that played. It was not that easy of a world to just walk into and start doing that. I knew it was like that was going to take a lot of time. It was like the people that didn't want to go on tour. They didn't want to go out and be on the road. They wanted to play sessions, and at 6 o'clock in the evening every day they go home.
So how did you get into that? What was that transition?
So I started playing with the band, and
most importantly, I think the other question I have: what did you do in the interim while you were trying to get into the mix of it?
I worked at a bookstore.
Wow.
Worked at a bookstore, and then met some people that were the part of this band, and they asked me, "Hey, would you go on the road? Our keyboard player just left.
That's crazy.
Play some keys with us," and it was really. I don't know, maybe even a month or two in, they were like, "Hey, we're about to make another album, and would you help us with the album and go into the studio with us?" I'm like,
absolutely.
Wow, that's exactly where I want to be. Yeah. And so I did. We recorded that album. We went to I don't know why we went to Atlanta to mix it. They said, "Hey, will you go help us? We're going to do the mix in Atlanta. Will you go with us?" I'm like, "Great, I'm there." And so that was like the door that opened of me getting into the studio world and being a part of it. I make it sound like this happened in 2 weeks.
Right. What was that process like? How many years?
It was within the first year of me living in Nashville.
Now, what was the name of the band?
It was a group called the Newsboys. The gospel.
All right. As a matter of fact.
That they had a guy in the group named Corey Pryor, who was their keyboard. Corey had left, and Corey was a really good friend of mine as well.
See, I didn't even make the connection.
So that was the first intro into being in the studio, was with the Newsboys. A guy named Steve Taylor was producing the records at that time. And that's what it was. I wasn't engineering any of this stuff yet. I was just playing and come up with parts and play. That's what I was doing at the time. And a lot of the stuff that happened back then, some of the earliest things that I got credits on. Yeah. One of the credits I'm the most proud of was way back in the day. I actually played keys on Commission's Matters of the Heart.
Wow!
And it's like, which was like one of my favorite groups at the time. But a good friend of mine, really great friend of mine at the time, a guy named Brian Lennox, was producing the project, and he's like, "Well, I need you on this track." I'm like, "Fantastic!" And so, but this is way before I was engineering was not even part of the producing, and engineering was not even part of the picture.
Yeah,
it was
just. I had this conversation once with Herb Powers, phenomenal, the GOAT of mastering. And Herb was telling stories like this. I love stories. I love making the connections and those wow moments when I'm like, oh man, I didn't know you did that. I didn't know you did that. I didn't know you did that. But Herb was telling a story about like all these people, like Justin Timberlake, and he knew these people when it was just Justin, when it was just Mariah, when it was just, Usher, when he was Raymond, before he was Usher.
Wow.
You know what I mean? Like he knew these people before. He knew Alicia when she was just Alicia Keys,
Wow.
And so he's telling these stories of how he met him. And so I said to him, I said, man, to us, these things are history. But to you, it was just Tuesday. It was Monday.
Yeah.
It was just a day. It was just another day and this happened. So it was just a day and you got the call to play on commission. It was just a day and you were in the bookstore and somebody walks in and it's the guys from Newsboys that wants you to be a part of the band. That's nuts.
Yeah, kind of crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, that's kind of crazy. So where does that transition occur from musician to engineer, or I'm pretty sure you walked the line pretty tight between both? Because I've seen.
I did. I was always interested in the process of it. Like I said,
Yeah.
I loved the process of it. So I'd try to take in anything that I could along the way. But I'll tell you what the transition was.
Mixing is a very, very hard art to master. I know because I've been trying to master this art for several years. That is one of the reasons why I do Mix Mondays. It's a learning environment, and every mix that I do, I learn something new. And I've taken everything that I've learned over the years and we have poured it into our mixing templates. Mixing templates are a great starting place, and we have created several templates that allow you to get up and going quickly. And we have created them for Logic Pro X. We have created them for Pro Tools, for Studio One, for Ableton Live, and so many others. So if you're interested in taking your mixing to the next level, or even just getting started, make sure you check out these links down below in the description of this video and grab your template today. All right, back to the show.
I started working with a guy named Tommy Sims, one of the most talented people that I've ever met in my entire life. So we met one day at a studio, and he said, "Hey, man, come in tomorrow. I want to talk to you about some things I've got going on." And I knew who Tommy was. I mean, Tommy was already legendary.
Yeah, legend.
Right?
Yeah.
So he came and talked to me about what all he was doing, and he said, "Hey, I want you to be a part of all of these projects with me." And so now I'm probably a couple of years into being in Nashville, and I mean, really just starting to get my feet wet on some of these things. And so I actually told him, let me think about it, let me pray about it. I was like, I'm so flattered, like I want to. And it was, I remember it was over the course of a long week, there was a holiday, I think, on Monday or Friday or something. And I said, let me let you know, as soon as everything starts happening again, Tuesday morning, I'll call you, I'll let you know. And he called me every day that weekend, and it's a little, he's like, have you made up your mind yet? Because we have this, and I was like, I haven't yet. I'm still, which is, if you know Tommy at all, if you've ever met him, he's a man of few words. He's not one of those like pick up the phone and call a whole lot. So the whole weekend I thought about it, and like, man, I just feel like I think I'm just going to tell him no. Wow. And my thinking was this, I've been here a couple of years and I want to work with you, but at the same time, I feel like I've spent all this time building up clients and people that are trusting what I do. And if he has as much stuff as he's talking about, as much as I would love it, I'm going to be disappearing from some of these things. And I feel like I'm all of a sudden just walking away from the things that I had been building up. That was my thinking over it. So over the weekend, I rehearsed exactly what I was going to tell him, to like, I want to leave the door, I would love to work on something, but I don't want to, I just don't think it's the time yet. I don't know what I came up with. Tuesday morning came. I was barely awake, and the phone rang. It was Tommy. He said, "Hey, hey, here's the thing. I'm going to be working on a project at the Castle Studio. That's where it was. I'm going to be working on a project at the Castle tracking, but I'm going to rent out the other room, bring all your stuff, and you can go ahead and get started on this other, he was like, and I was like looking for a break in the conversation to, start my whole thing that I'd rehearsed.
Right.
Hey, but I, like, yeah, Tom. And he kept, no, but bring all your stuff. Can you be there in about an hour? We're going to get set up, and then you've got through. We'll be there for the whole week, and I'll show you this track. And there was just like no break to get into my lines, and so finally he, all of us, he was done talking to me about everything, and I was like ready to go. And I just remember like thinking, it happened suddenly, and I was about to go into it, and I honestly felt God saying, "Stop trying to hold on to something you think you've created.
Wow.
And trust me."
Wow.
So all I said was, "Sounds great. I'll see you in about an hour." And so from that day forward, Tommy and I worked on every project together for about the next 8 years. And that was a lot of the transition. We, at first we were like creating tracks and all this stuff, but as we moved on, and like I said, we were printing things to actual analog tape at the time. Yeah. So, we'd create these tracks, and at the time it was called printing. Let's go print this onto tape. So I remember he just never liked the feel of it after it went to tape. He's like, "Man, you got to figure this out. What's happening? Why doesn't it feel the same now that it's on tape? And like, what happened to the feel? What happened to the sound?" Yeah. He's like, "Man, you figure out how to start doing this." And so, again, there was, if there was internet, it was very, there was like 2 websites or something. It was way so far back that there was not looking it up on YouTube. It was like, man, I was just going and getting the manuals. I was calling engineer friends of mine going, "What does this stuff do?" Like, because I got to figure this out. I had a good friend that managed a studio, and he would let me stay there. And like literally, we would finish work and I would stay there overnight. I would not sleep. I would look up that manuals if they could find them. Yeah. If not, I would run stuff. I'd go up to a console and run stuff through it. I would learn how to patch into a compressor. I didn't even know what a compressor was. I would patch into a compressor and like one knob at a time go, "All right, what does this do?" And I would just listen. I'm like, "Oh, okay. Oh, okay, that's what it's doing, Wow. And then I'd look and see what the name of that knob was. Okay, so that's what that does, it was literally finding out what it did by ear.
Wow.
And that's how I learned engineering. And it's something that was really difficult, but later I would be really, really thankful for
those moments. Yeah.
And I'll tell you why, because so many times people think of engineering as a very technical part of this, but it's not. It is a very musical part of it. If you use your ears, it's not about what frequency is there, like that's fighting that you have to carve out, or what a compression ratio is. It's like, how does this sound? How do we create this sound to fit into the track, to fit the rest of it, to make it say what this lyric is saying?
Wow.
It's a creative, it's a musical process, and it's not technical. I mean, there's some technical stuff behind it. Yeah. But you approach it from a musical thing, and so even now when I'm dialing in, I cutting vocals just before you walked in, and and getting a sound, and I'll reach over and start grabbing the EQ. I won't even look at what the knobs are.
Wow.
I don't even care, because as like sometimes you would like psych yourself out to like suddenly look at an EQ and it's like, that's the weirdest thing. Like nobody would ever EQ.
Right.
It doesn't matter what it looks like.
It's what it sounds like.
It's what it sounds like.
I love that. So I preach that all the time, man, to our things, to our community, telling people all the time, like, look, don't get in your head about what this is.
Right.
Learn the tools, like you said. Sit down
Yeah.
and figure out what does that knob do. So when you reach for it, you know what you're turning.
Yeah.
You know what you're doing. But, don't get so married to, like you said, these frequency ranges and this and what's 2K and what's 3K. Know what 3K is. Know what 2K is. Know what 300 or what a low cut or a high cut is or and what these things do.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's all about what does it sound like? Because I pulled up a mix a few weeks ago and I was doing a demo. I was online. I was showing the mix or whatever.
Yeah.
And I had not opened up this mix for like a year. I did it like last year. And then I'm pulling it back up to show, the community what I'm doing. And so I'm going through the channels on the drums and I'm like, well, there's nothing on this channel. It just and I said it sounded good. There was nothing on the kick, like nothing, no plugins, maybe like VMR or something like that.
Yeah.
That was it. There was nothing else on it. But the kick just sounded good like it was. And it just worked in the mix. So when I heard it, I was like, what am I touching it for?
Sure.
It sounds good like that. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. And you move on to something
That's
else.
the goal. Capture it well.
Yeah,
And
it was captured well. It sounded good. So okay, moving into that. So Tommy Sims, you thought about telling Tommy Sims no, and God told you to
It wasn't like
tell
a
him
hard
yes.
no, but it was just like, hey, just trust
Like
me.
a maybe.
Yeah.
You was trying to give Tommy a maybe. So you can keep your things going on there. So you moved into that. You spent all of these years.
I got a good story with that.
Okay,
Can I
keep
share
going. Yeah,
that?
Go ahead.
Okay, so
Just following the
this is
timeline.
another cool story. No, this is, if it's horrible, cut all this out.
No.
I like this is a pretty cool story though.
No, I wanna hear
so that same day, I went over to the castle, brought all my stuff with me, and I was in the B room, and Tommy was tracking in the A room. He gave me this track, and it's not just a cool story. It's like the basis of like where I started really listening to music and sounds and making it make sense.
Yeah.
So he gave me this track. He's like, hey, here's the track that we need. And I listened to it and I thought, man, this is the the simplest, like the most ridiculous little track I've ever heard. I was like, he's like, all right, so I'll check back in, later in the day, and we're here. We've got the studio all week. And I honestly thought, man, I'll have this track done by lunch. We're So I did. I thought it was pretty cool. Something, and so he walks in, around lunchtime, and I'm like, yeah, let me play this for you. Yeah. And he's like, no, this is, man, it's gotta like make me feel lonely.
Wow.
Like I need to feel longing, It's and I'm like, this is the first time somebody I ever heard like talking about music with that much emotion.
Yeah.
Like it needs to, like feel, like make me feel this and I'm like, wow.
Yeah.
And so I went back to the drawing board on it, and we kept, we did this on and off, a couple of days later, it's like, it is, but I don't feel desperate. This situation needs to feel desperate. I was like, man, we're talking in emotions. It's not like give me another keyboard patch. It's like we're talking about feelings, So we actually spent the entire week there, getting this little track together, which is it ended up being a little more than that, but it sounds just like it's a tiny, really simple drum beat.
Yeah.
A couple of stacked Juno 106s playing a little pad, and a few other little elements that was on the song. And then finally he's like, well, Tommy's like, let me put a vocal on it. And this is like the last day. I'm like, finally, I get to hear like where we're going with it. And so he's like, just hand me we had a little, like an SM57 or something, wired into his handheld. He's like, no, just give me that. He was standing in the hallway, there's a hallway outside of Studio B. And he was just standing in the hallway, leaning against the wall, and the track started, and he like kind of was halfway leaning back, and he sang these little la 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 things, and it ended. He was like, all right, I'm done. I'm like, I still don't know. Like, wow, this was just some la la la's on this track. It felt great. Sounded like, And so we were done, and so he was like, all right, we gotta go cut a vocal on this thing.
Yeah.
And so finally I was like, what is this track? So the track was actually the title cut for the movie Philadelphia.
Whoa.
And it's called Streets of Philadelphia. You can go and listen to it now, and you'll hear a simple drum beat, couple of 106 things, and Bruce Springsteen's vocal and Tommy Sims singing some la la las.
Wow.
That it seems like the simplest thing, but not just how cool of a story it is, what the song ended up being. But for me, like all of a sudden, I'm thinking of music in terms of, what this song is saying. It's how it feels like when I'm hearing this. Like, do I feel what this song is about?
That's good.
And so, that's the first thing that Tommy and I ever got to work on with Tommy. So
wow,
was that. And like I said, from just about every day for the next 8 years, we worked side by side on things. Crazy. I felt like I was at school every day. Like I was like getting paid to go to school every day to learn from
the master. Yeah,
he really is.
Learn from that's amazing.
But he was the one that encouraged me to start like learning how to engineer, like figure out how to put this, because I don't know what's happening, but like I don't like what's happening so far, but you figured out. So I learned it like that, and he pushed me to, I started printing the stuff, and he's like, oh well, we're gonna record a band.
Yeah,
you cut it. You record it, And again, I'm calling up engineer friends, looking at man, it was like, how do I, Micah, whatever it is. And so I'm like learning this and just like taking the time, spending nights in the studio, listening to a kick drum. Well, what happens if I move the mic here? Wow. What about if I move it here? What if, it was like, and that's how I learned it. And, we grew from there. About a year later, we did this big session. It was probably a 50-piece string session, orchestra session, and we had done several of these, and we always had somebody come in. I'm like, okay, great, Tommy, who's engineering? And he's like, you're doing this one. I'm like, oh no, absolute. I know that's too much money on the clock.
Yeah.
He's like, no, you got this. Like, I believe in you. Wow. You can do it. You've got this.
So amazing.
He threw me into the fire, but I'm forever grateful for him, and we still get the chance to work together quite a bit, and he is still the greatest.
Oh man, no, the greatest learn from the greatest. I think and it's something to be said about just that process of just figuring it out. And I think it's so taken for granted and the art of it is lost because now everybody's trying to go find a video on YouTube or trying to do this because, it's so saturated that we lose the art of just, like you said, going and turning the knob and seeing what it does, going and getting the mic and moving it in different places to understand like what that does. And then I think it speaks to like even I think I could see the journey, like going back to what you were saying, like Tommy's telling you about emotion and how you learn like cognitively it sets into you. So when you get into recording, that same process is almost brought over into it. It's like you're looking for the emotion, you're serving the song, you're going by feel. What do you feel? What does this feel like? What does it need to feel like? And you're building from there and turning from there. It's amazing.
Yeah, that's all there is to it. When if I am and not even cutting a vocal, if I'm recording a band, you were laying down band tracks, even if there's no vocalist gonna be singing, I want the lyric in front of me.
Wow.
Like what is this song about?
Wow.
So even from the moment we started getting sounds with drums and finding guitar tones, like everything that goes into that has to say this.
Wow.
What this lyric is saying.
Wow. That's something to be said. See, that's the kind of stuff y'all need to pay attention to. You heard it here. You won't hear it on YouTube. You won't find it on YouTube. They're not going to tell you that kind of stuff. That's amazing. So how does this journey progress? Like, what is that moment? I mean, Tommy Sims, that's definitely a moment where you just say, Wow. But when does it become independent of Tommy and it becomes Tommy and it's not just Tommy, it's Danny, and people are calling Danny to come record this, calling Danny to come do that, calling Danny to come do this. What is that first, like, I don't know if you could top Tommy Sims. I mean, but
I mean, I still feel like I'm in class every time we are in the room together.
Wow.
So, I don't know. I think more and more people just start asking me to do things, apart from what I was doing with him, which was like loads and loads of stuff. But
wow.
And even one of the first things I did apart from it, I remember it was, I'll tell you who called me. It was Mark Kibble, and it was a thing for Take Six. And it was a Take Six a few years into working with Tommy. Hey, we want you to engineer this. I think it was a Christmas album.
Wow.
And so when he called, I said, I'll come do it. I was like, but I got to tell you how I work. And it's not like I'm making no demands of you. This is confession time.
Yeah.
It's like, I am not a technically trained engineer. This is how I work. This is my thought process, and I describe what this is how I approach it. So, and I thinking they may go, okay, we'll find somebody else. Mark that's exactly the approach we want. Yeah. Wow. So, I just think there were more people who started calling, apart from things like that, which led more into other independent projects, other artists, and which led into producing as well. Yeah. So it kind of just it grows from it grows.
I mean, it's like you're like an onion, man. I mean, there's so many layers from a keyboard player to a musician to the engineer to a producer to an orchestrator.
It is, yeah.
I mean, it's like you fall in line and you cover so many areas. From the engineering side, I think I want to kind of go in this direction to kind of cover some of those things. Because you talked about your approach, like the way you approach things. And, so what does that look like? What is your typical approach? Like an artist calls you, says, hey, I want you to work on my record. I want you to record my record. And they give you a date or time or whatever. What does that process typically look like in summary,
It always starts with a conversation about, like, if I've never worked with the artist before, who are you? Tell me who you are.
Yeah.
There has to be who you are behind this, a personality behind it, and what are you saying? Who are we saying this to? Like, what is, who are you? I hope nobody ever calls me because, I like the sound of your sound.
Yeah.
People say I've created my sound.
Yeah.
And I hope I've never created my sound. I think that would be a disservice to every client. It's not my job to have a sound.
Wow.
It's about the artist and their sound. It's not my vision, it's their vision. That's my job as the engineer is to help them realize what it is that they're wanting to do, what they are wanting to say.
Yeah.
It can't sound like me. It can't sound like anything I've done before. It needs to sound uniquely who they are, and what they are doing. So I stay away from ever wanting or desiring, I've created my sound. I really hope I haven't, because I have failed.
That's so good.
If that's the case, it's not about me. So the approach is, it's about you as an artist. What are you wanting to do? What is your message, and how do you want to say it? Even with people that I've done 20 projects with.
Yeah.
Every single time before we ever go into the studio, there's multiple conversations about, hey, this is where we're going with this one. This is what's on my heart. This is what we're saying. And it all has to start from there, and then we take it and go, all right, well then, like, how do we get there?
How do we get there?
How do we get there? Yeah.
Man. So from that point, what is the technical part of that look like? Like, what are you doing in terms of like prep and getting ready for a live recording, say, like with like any artist, Israel or Tasha, and I know, pretty sure every scenario is different. You know what I mean? Every room you walk into is going to have its own challenges to try to figure it out.
Yeah.
But what does that process look like in terms of, like, just aesthetically, like, where you?
So there's some similarities between being in the studio and recording a live project. In fact, when I did my first ever live recording, I had done nothing but spent years of my life in the studio. I didn't know anything but studio. I didn't know how to approach a live recording. So my approach was, I'm going to take everything I do in the studio
and just
bring the studio to the live event, and we're going to treat it like a big giant studio with an audience.
With an audience.
And believe it or not, that's still my approach to a live recording. Like approaching everything with studio quality microphones and mic pre's and let's create this. So technically speaking, with a live recording, it's a little more involved because for the most part, the whole thing is happening in one night, as opposed to over the course of several weeks or several months. Everybody is here. We're capturing this all at once. Starts with an input list. Who are the players on that? I'll have a conversation with each individual player.
Wow.
All right, you guys have probably been in rehearsals. What are you bringing for this? What kind of stuff are you bringing? Over the years, I've built up just relationships with a lot of people that I see on a regular basis, and so we're already there. You know how it is when you work with people, and there's a reason you keep working with some of the same people. Sometimes it's not because you don't prefer anyone else. It's like sometimes especially when you think just need to gel, you want something that they already know where you're going.
They already know where you're going. It's a conversation. It's an unspoken conversation.
And so, a literal conversation with each person about what they're doing, how we're approaching this, come up with input lists, go back and forth. Does this look right? How is this going to be set up on a live stage? How are we getting that many inputs to us? How is that getting to front of house? How's that getting to monitors? Are we split off from them? Are we sharing gains on some digital pre somewhere? Are we, all of the little technical aspects of that kind of thing, conversations with the front of house and monitor engineer. And so that most of them have become really, really good friends of mine, and the same kind of thing. We kind of anticipate where each other's headed, and because there's some things where we're split off, but there's a lot of things that we have to agree on. What mics we're using, that's going to be the same for all of us. How to best isolate instruments in those situations if
That's a big one.
needed. Is isolation even that important on this? And so what's the venue? What's the room that we're going to be in? What's that going to be doing to our sound? That's one of the biggest things with live recordings. The room that you're in becomes its own instrument. There's with ambience and knowing how to treat those. How much is the room a part of this recording?
Wow.
As opposed to just the crowd and the audience response a part of this recording. The room and the audience are two different things.
That's a good point. I never heard anybody put that in context, that the room is like an instrument.
It really is.
That's so good.
And it can be in a very good way to your advantage, or it can be like something you have to overcome if it's not a good situation.
Not a good source. That's so good. So do you prototype any of this stuff like before? Like if I got a recording coming out this time, is it the room, the venue, you've gotten the input list from the artist or from whomever's supplying you that information. How much of that are you kind of prototyping? So, because again, like you said, it has to happen in one night. So what are the steps that you're putting in place to ensure that one night goes off without a hitch?
So it's always different for every live recording, because there are sometimes it's, we're going to load in on Monday morning. We're going to be recording rehearsals. We're going to be doing overdubs before with some of the vocals, and we're going to capture a dress rehearsal on a Wednesday night, and we're going to have a full-on recording on Thursday night, and then the real ones on, when you have you're on site even for overdubs after the fact, and you could be on site for 7 days on some of these. Yeah. Some of them are not. Yeah. Some of them are, it's someone who is on tour. Yeah. We're loading in at 6 a.m. The concert's at 7 that night, and we've got to be out by midnight. So it's all happens in one day. So, they're all approached a little different depending on how much time you have. But we'll do as much pre-patching as I can before we leave. So I have my own recording rig that I've built up specifically. I'm still building it. Wow. It's not built. I've been years in the process of building this. That is, it's various mic pre's and compression and the way, it's just signal flow really that has been built up specifically for the best way to capture a live concert, a live performance inside of a venue. So, having input lists that we've gone over like many times prior to arriving, I'll get in there, a couple of my guys will get in there with me and pre-patch some of this stuff. So when we arrive, it's a matter of connecting, mass connectors on a snake. And so, especially helps if it's just one day on site. Yeah. When we patch in, hopefully 95% is already there, showing up, and we're ready to go. We're ready to go with it.
So it's something to say about the prep, and I think that's one of the reasons why I asked that, because I'm pretty sure a lot of people watching, and they aspire, and I've never done a live recording. I aspire to one day. But
come with me. We're going to do one together.
We're going to do one together.
Let's
do
that.
Come
on. We'll take everybody.
We'll take everybody because we got to show them this process.
I will show you everything. People always say, "Hey, show me your secrets," and my response is, "I have no secrets. I will show you everything I know."
We could do that. We're definitely gonna show that to you guys. I think it's gonna be amazing. But I want you to speak to. I'm glad you started talking about the input list and the prepper and the fact that you have a whole separate rig, and we're gonna talk about what's in that rig specifically next. But the fact that you have a rig, because I know. So there's a staple. Me and my friends, we laugh about this all the time. I have a couple of friends we laugh about this. We call it the X32 recording. It's everybody.
I don't know why I'm laughing.
But you know what I'm talking about.
I know.
It's the guy, because I've gotten those to mix, and I've had friends that get that stuff to mix, and it's basically like the church got an X32 or M32 or something 32. Allen and Heath 32. They got a 32 something. They got 32 channels, and they can come USB off the board into Pro Tools or into Logic or into whatever DAW that they decide that they want to use at the moment. And now they think we can do a live recording. And so I know from all of your decades of experience that it can happen, but those are not the ideal situations, especially to on the back end, because we all know of records. I can think of a couple right now that I won't say names of, but I know of records that were recorded in that fashion, that they're still, I know of one specifically that's still in post-production 2 years after the fact because of an X32 USB recording. And I know, pretty sure if you got put in a situation like that, you could probably make it work because you know how to record, but that's not the ideal way to do it. So maybe you could speak to that a little bit, to those people that have the X32 at their house, at their church front of house right now, and they think we could do a live recording. Like, what would you say to those people? What is that a bit of advice of, to kind of, in my mind, talk them out of it?
I got you.
What is that? What would you say to those people?
The very first thing I would say is, if that's what you have, and that is your only means of recording, by all means, use it. Mm-hmm. I am all for
use what you got.
Use what you have, and within the means that you have available to you.
Yeah.
That's far better than not having anything recorded.
Very true.
At all.
Very true.
So if you can't go beyond that, by all means use it. Get your ideas, get your what's in your heart, man, get it out there, record it, just do it.
Yeah.
Like whatever that means.
Yeah.
But equip yourself a little bit, going into it. Like if you can't call somebody to bring in a mobile truck or a live recording rig, pay them that knows where to put microphones and how to properly set microphones, how to deal with phasing issues with a lot of microphones on stage. It's a lot of microphones in a small confined space. Then this is a thing that I've realized that a lot of people completely understand that more microphones raised louder does not necessarily mean that it's going to sound better or even louder. Phasing is a very, very big deal, and it requires ears and some knowledge to know how it works and how to hear it even. I was just showing somebody recently, and flipped out of phase, and it makes me want to cringe, and they're like, sounds the same to me. I'm like, really? So
that's the thing.
And whether you hear it or not, it does affect what you have recorded. There's a lot of things that you can record, whether it's on an X32 or it's on the greatest recording system you can get. There's a lot of things that cannot be undone or just fixed in the mix. You can't take something that is over compressed and undo that. You cannot undo dropout, mics dropping out, distortion, for the most part cannot be just erased. So there's a lot of things to consider, but by all means, if that's your only means of doing it,
go
absolutely.
For it.
Like but educate yourself. Call us. Call somebody to just come in for a day and
look at it.
Help find the trouble spots. Like at least we'll go into your X32, but let's put things here. Let's use this type of mic that will isolate this a little bit better. And even if this is not the most ideal thing that we'd normally use, it'll isolate it, and whatever happens that night, we can fix it later. Because, I don't know what is going on with the project it's 2 years in the making, but I have had numerous experiences with people that call and say, hey, we need you to come and do a live recording for us. They'll tell me all about it, and I will put it together, and I will send them the quote, and they're like, oh wow, no thanks, we've got somebody with a console, it's gonna be good. And a lot of those people call me back later and go, hey, we did it. Can you fix it?
And that's my point.
The answer is yes. Yes, we can. What's funny is that they end up spending more money fixing than we would have ever spent like recording it properly in the first place.
And that's my point. The 2 year, that's the reason why is the budget. Like they're having to go back in.
It costs a lot to fix.
And it could have been they could have done a studio record for half the cost. You know what I'm saying, of what they've spent on the live recording itself, and trying to fix what's broken. But that makes a whole lot of sense. I mean, it's definitely the ear and the mind, and not the gear. Because like I said, you can make anything work, but you got to know what you're doing with that. What is that? Like, it goes back to what you were saying earlier about putting the mic somewhere and figuring out, what does this mic do? Where does it sound? Where's the phase?
Everybody always has a friend. We can come and it'll save so much money.
So much money.
But it's there's this saying I posted one time. I can't remember exactly what it's saying, but it man, you can't afford not to hire a professional. Like, you think you can't afford to hire? No, it's like you can't afford not to, because it will cost you. And I'm perfectly willing to fix it after the fact.
Yeah, it's just going to cost
you. Win, but like, let me show you how much you could have spent initially. Exactly. And so,
it makes total sense.
But that's all right. I mean, I'm always trying to be a resource for anyone, however I can help. And like I said, I'll tell you everything I know. So
So much to
You
that,
know, if
man.
it's you're going to do a live recording and just need some advice, then you know try to get in touch with us. We'll help you all that we can.
Yeah, I think you should definitely call Danny for
My
those things.
my goal is that you are just able to do it. So
Yeah. I mean, like you said, to serve the actual song, serve the music the way it needs to be served, and present it in the way that it needs to be presented. And you need to call a professional that's good at that. No difference than if you were painting your house. Like, you could get up there with you could go spend money on a ladder and get a paint bucket, and then you start slopping stuff on there, and then you get halfway down, and then you realize, oh no, like, I should have actually went on Angie's List, if that's still a thing now, and got somebody, or Thumbtack, or whatever these little things they got now, to hire somebody to actually do the work the right way. And I learned that the hard way in my personal life with different things that I tried to fix around the house and then end up tearing it up. You know what I mean? But it's a good situation. So speaking to your actual recording rig, like, so because I want to paint the picture. I really want people to understand the dynamics, no pun intended, around a live recording and what it takes to not only to capture it, but to capture it in a way that you're going to be pleased with after the fact. So when you talk about your rig, your truck, they're ever expanding, what's in your rig right now that really that helps you get the job done?
It's not much different from what you'd see in the studio. I don't know if you can see. It's racks full of mic pre's and compression and EQs and exactly what I would use in a studio. But like there's certain pieces that I've like over the years, like, oh, this is so super clean on vocals. So I'll, it's not like there's a formula that I always use this on something. It changes depending. But I've always added pieces that I've found like, oh, this works so well. This particular microphone works so well, and that's what I mean. It's always when I find something, add that piece in. We're going to start. There's a lot of different flavors that we can choose from, and it's a modular rig. I've like 3 or 4 times gone really hardcore into building a truck. In a mobile truck that pulls up, and there's some really nice advantages of that. You can even patch and do a lot of prep even more so, with everything in a truck, pull up on site. And I've tried to do that several times, and the negatives always outweigh the positives on it of how, and I'll tell you why. They're with a modular rig, which we're like, we can be anywhere from like 4 rack cases full of stuff to 20. Just depending on what we're doing. If we come in and supply mic stands and cables and everything you can imagine, our goal has been like if we walk, everybody wants us to see the venue first, and so, but we've gotten to where like if we walk into a venue, there is no PA, there is nothing in that room but some chairs. We can do a live recording. We've got we've got you. We got you. So. With the modular rig like this, it just makes a lot more sense because we've been able to get inside of places that I never would have been able to do with a truck. We do a lot of recordings in the UK. We do a lot of stuff out of the country. We can fly these, we can cargo these. We do a lot of in Nashville, in any bigger cities. We do quite a bit of things in New York. We've done Madison Square Garden several times. We've done with an actual broadcast or recording truck, it is nearly impossible to park a truck in some places. With a modular, we can always move it into a little space, whether that's some isolated space that we create ourselves, or if there's an extra dressing room, or we've
find a space to create.
But with this rig, we have been able to record in so many places that we could have never gone with just a truck. I mean, we've recorded in kitchens. We have recorded. We recorded in the New York subway.
Wow!
Like right down in the subway. we've like
actually
just
the
about
place
any place you can imagine. We've done a recording.
That's crazy.
So
what are some of the pieces that you would say that's in the reel? What are your main pieces of
main pieces? APIs. I love APIs. Got a lot of APIs. Vintex or any kind of like any Neve-ish pieces. Millennia. I have a bunch of Millennia that I like. Is super clean. Kind of thing. I have these ADMs, boutique kind of mic pre's that have come. I don't know if you've seen them or their EQs. Really cool. Focusrite. I have quite a bit of Focusrite stuff. You would see a lot of the usual suspects you would see in a recording studio. That we just bring right into the venue and we.
So you patch. So basically, are you like building? It's like a modular console. So
it is. That's what it is.
So you don't have an actual board that you're.
Don't have an actual.
You just have a modular
console,
like a rack kind of situation that you can just move in.
Yeah.
And how many? Basically, how
it's
many?
It's exactly like we would do here. We can do as many inputs as you have. So we recorded. I think the record for the number of inputs. It's approaching 200 inputs, and it might have been just over 200 inputs.
Jeez.
For 7 or 8 years in a row, we recorded this event called Passion Conference I want to say it's in Atlanta. It was always it was multiple venues. And that's where we are approaching 200 inputs every single time. And it was multiple venues happening simultaneously. So we had 3 rigs in 3 separate cities simultaneously recording, and it's band after band. So it's and a lot of spoken mics, and it's in the Mercedes Benz Dome thing. So, like 20 of them are just crowd mics, if not more. It might be more crowd mics than that. So with all of those inputs and switching band, it's just like super nuts. High in input.
That's nuts.
Counts.
Like, how do you manage that many inputs in one setting? Like, how does that?
The input list is literally a book. That goes out, and it's you'll see a matrix of what's coming to record, where it's routed, where that's going to, because there's a lot of elements to that. We're not just doing the recording on that, but also broadcast.
Yeah, the broadcast too.
Broadcast mix, which is a whole separate thing that we're providing on that one as well. And so, and then there's like uplink trucks that are. They did this thing. One year where all of the campuses, where like one was in Houston, one was in Washington, D.C., one was in Atlanta, and all 3 venues were playing the same song simultaneously and at the same time switching inside the venue, so that all of a sudden the guitar solo on this song is coming from Washington, D.C., and then the singer is singing this. So exactly with like latency, like over fiber channels that were, it's a lot to it. So like some of the most like technically challenging.
So you guys remember when we was talking on the front end, and I used the word GOAT, and if you don't know what that acronym stands for, it's the greatest of all time. If you can manage all of that, multiple cities, all of those inputs, I'm sure you got a staff. You're not sitting there trying to do all of that yourself. You're not the guy in the Matrix with all of the, trying to manage all that. I'm pretty sure you got a pretty hefty staff.
I try to hire people that are way smarter than me.
Yeah.
So
smart. That's how you do it. They say if you're the smartest one in the room, you're dumb.
Yeah.
No, that's amazing. So okay, so here's another piece, because I want this will tie me into what we want to say, and then we're gonna ask some questions from the community, and then we're gonna get out of your way, because I know you got another session coming in here in just a little bit, so I want to make sure I honor that. Just to give a perspective, if you had to put a number on how much that rig cost to build out.
I would have no idea.
If just ballpark, I'm just gonna throw out in the stab in the dark. If somebody was gonna buy it from me right now, I would charge them blah.
For what I just described?
Yeah. Like the 200 input broadcast.
Man, hundreds and hundreds of thousands. But that's not all mine. Like,
I know.
Mine is a part of the whole thing that was,
your rig that you normally kind of go out with then.
Oh man, that's tough too, because oh gosh, if I were to take everything with me, I don't know, we're probably 150, 200, 200,000. With
rough estimate.
with microphones and a lot of times I'll look, and if I see somebody like, oh, they're selling out a studio, they have 50 microphones, well, I'll take them all. I'll use them at some point.
Yeah, gosh.
I don't know. It's hard to say, but something like passion, that is not, that is a lot of additional stuff hired in to pull off something like that. And
that's definitely crazy. But reason I asked that question, not to be nosy in how much you spend, it speaks to the question of what we were talking about just a little bit about budgets and people that, because you'll give them a quote, oh, this is what it costs to get this recording done. And they're like, oh, that's a bit much. I didn't think it was going to be that much. But when you put into consideration, like your years of experience, what your ear, and the quality that you have proven over decades, and then put that in combination with the amount of equipment and the rig that you have, the equipment that you have, and the fact that the staff and all that you have that goes into it, then it starts to say, well, that's kind of low. That's kind of a low number, honestly. When you put all of that in perspective, I think is what I was wanting to kind of get that perspective of, because you put a lot of investment, not just time, not just effort, but you put a lot of of your own hard-earned literal money into building out the ultimate, or continuing to build out the ultimate situation to be able to serve the record, to serve the artist.
And I try to find a way to work with everybody's budget.
Definitely.
I really do. And especially if it's somebody, it's something I get it and I believe in it. I'm like, well, look, I'm going to find a way to make this work for you.
Yeah.
Like even if we bring in a smaller rig, less people, let's find a way.
To make it work.
I want to, because that's where my heart is. And, that's what I really believe in. Like, and let's find the way to do it, no matter how much gear is there or isn't. And I love gear. I do. I love as much as anybody, but I'm not one of those like, let's rely on gear to fix all this for us.
Exactly.
There's it's funny how you probably get this. People will, but you get 10 of them a day.
Oh.
People go, hey, send me a good EQ settings for a great sounding kick drum.
Right.
Not understand, and I don't make fun of it, it's like, do you understand how that question doesn't even make a whole lot of sense?
Yeah.
A kick drum with what mic, in what room, played by what drummer, on what kind, let's go to the secret for having a great sounding drum track is a great drummer.
Yeah. Come on.
It's or they will say, hey, what's a great mic? I need a great sounding mic for my kick drum. I don't like the one we have. I was like, well, how does it sound without a mic? Well, it's terrible. Well, it's not the mic problem. Let's talk about, let's start with tuning. Let's talk about the every bit of music that you hear, all of it. The originating point is from a beating heart of a person, a real live person with passion in their heart. That's where it comes from, and you treat it like that, not something that's technical. Let's slap a good mic and something on it and let's make it sound like something. It is a piece of someone's heart that is, being captured, and it's
that's so good.
So it changes your perspective on it a little bit. It
does. That changes my, even just listening to you talk about it has changed my perspective on a lot of things. Just listening to your heart on it has changed even the way I'm looking at things and thinking about things and moving forward. It goes back to, even like what you were just saying, goes back to a conversation I had with Yash when we first met. And I remember meeting Yash at this conference, getting close to a decade ago now. And we had talked about doing this mixing class, because I thought, we everybody thinks like you want to go straight to what the sexy thing is. This is the sexy thing that I want to know. I want to know what's a good EQ setting for the kick? That's the sexy thing. What not understanding, and excuse my analogies, the foreplay that leads up to that.
Right.
Yeah. But the thing is, when I went to Yash, instantly I said to him, I want to learn mixing. I want you to teach a class on mixing. Yeah. And Yash instantly said back to me, he said, I don't want to teach mixing. He said, I'm not interested in teaching. I said, really? He said, I want to teach people how to record.
Wow.
He said, I want to teach people how to record. He said, because people don't know how to
I love John Yash. Wow. I'm going to call him after this and go, thank you.
And so our first class was actually a recording class.
Fantastic.
We did a 10-hour course on recording. It's still on the site now. And then we paired it with the mixing. After we recorded it, we mixed it. And so we have the whole course, shameless plug. Because you guys are getting this for free, so I gotta sell you something, right? We have the course on the site. You can get it right now, recording and mixing, taught by John Yash. And so that was his instant answer to me. And I said, well, let's teach recording then, because he said better recordings make better mixes, and that was his whole analogy, and he hammered that throughout the course. Like you said, you have to learn how to record. Yeah. And so and I'm pretty sure this has been your testimony that people probably say to you a whole lot. I've heard people say this to me about you, so I know that they've said it to you. But I had that same sentiment with Yash when we sat in that class, and they said, when I got to the end of that recording, when we were recording, I said, it sounds like it's mixed.
Yeah.
It sounds done. Like, what else are we doing with this? And he's just like, no, we still got to mix it, but and then even when we're looking at his session after the recording, the channels are bare mostly. It's a little EQ, carve out a little here.
Yeah.
Do this, little compression here, make this work, fit this with there. But he wasn't doing a whole lot of work because we got it right at the recording.
Make it sound like what you want it to sound like in the end, right from the very beginning.
Yeah.
That's the only way to know sometimes if things are even going to work.
That's right.
There's I know there's hundreds of memes of the whole silly fix it in the mix mentality. But it is, make sure that it sounds like what you want from the very start. Let's build this, and so that we know that everything is going to work together.
Exactly.
And record it well, but there's still a lot of people that are like, I can't spend this much on recording because really I want to just, I'll capture it. It doesn't matter because I'm going to send it and get so and so to mix it, and we're going to save all that for mixing and pay them. So I love that he said. I love John Yash. I have many tricks I've learned from John Yash.
I'm sure he's learned some from you as well.
But I absolutely love him, and that he said that about recording. You cannot replace a bad recording with just mixing.
Yeah,
so
you can't. So without prologuing the time, I want to get into some of these community questions that we had here. I'm not going to ask all of them, but I'm going to ask, because some of these are redundant. They're kind of like...
That's all right. We'll get together again.
Yeah,
we'll do another.
But I'm going to get as many as we can here in these next few minutes. Let's see. My guy, Roy Uman, I'm going to mess his name up. But he says, what does he use for a redundant backup system when recording live?
So this is something I had custom made, but it's just a splitter system. And when everything comes into the rig, after it hits anything that I'm using, and meaning mic pre's, EQs, compression, which, some people would say why are you using that to record? You're EQing it going in. And I do. It's not like something that I'm doing after the fact, like on a plugin.
Yeah.
We were just talking about it. I actually record whatever EQ and compression, I record it with that on the actual track, because we record it how we want it to sound in the final mix.
That's good.
So after it hits all of the processing, before it goes into my recording rigs, it goes into it's a little rack mount space. It doesn't look like anything because everything is internal. Just D subs in
Okay. Yeah, D-sub.
Because we haven't hit any kind of converters or anything yet. D-sub's in, and that is an actual splitter, super clean splitter, and it splits. It's two of them out. One goes to Pro Tools system because I record my main recording. Everything's on a Pro Tools system. The other just goes to hard disk recorders that actually run. We sync them usually to time of day. When we arrive in the morning, those go into record. Those are in record all day long.
Wow.
From the moment we arrive until the time we hit at the last note is played and it's time to turn out the lights. Yeah. And the reason I do that, the reason we do that, not just hit it when it's time to record, that hard drives, they run all day because you wouldn't believe how many times we'll take a lunch break and the guitar player run in and go, hey, I was playing this little lick earlier when we were just jamming on that session. Do you happen to have that? Because I think we want to put that in the song, but I can't remember what I was doing.
Dang.
I was like, oh, I have it. Let's go back and listen. What time was that? And we can now go back to the,
That's
like,
so
I think
good.
it was around 10:30, right after we showed up. So we can, So it's just basic hard drives. They're not nothing fancy, but they just stay and record from the moment we arrive until we turn out the lights at night.
That's nuts. Okay, that's really good. So that was a good answer to that question. Okay, it says Michael Harvey says, when he records live, does he use separate power outside of the power that is within the church/venue? He said, I've seen entire churches and venues trip breakers and end up having to stop because of the power load was too much.
Yeah. So we have a technical rider. That's a great question. We have a technical rider that goes out that just says, this is what our power requirements are, and this is what we need. And it's, for recording, it's not that much. We're not pulling near as much power as like PA systems and lighting systems. For us, we need two separate 20 amp circuits. I just happen to know that off the top of my head because we just sent one out and they were questioning it. And that's all that we need. And we ask about their power, make sure it's good and clean power that's coming in. I'm not opposed to using power that's in the house if it's clean and if it's really stable. We also go into battery backups first. So if the power in that entire room goes out, then we have, at the very least, time to shut down like a Pro Tools system, things like that, and figure out what's happening with it.
These basic like UPS backup systems.
Just battery backup systems that'll stay and record. I mean, we've been in places where power's gone out in the entire place, like on stage. It's like, well, nothing's happening if that happens. We will try our best to always be on generators or whatever's, most of the large recordings, they've brought in, generators or multiple generators, and we're all tied together and we have backups, but always have a backup. Imagine the worst thing that can happen and have it's like, so if that happens, what do we do then? And have that backup system already in place.
That's so good.
That's the way to do it. So
backups of your backups.
Backups of your backups. Yeah.
Always plan for that. Okay, here's a good one. My guy Delavanta Tabor. I mess up his name on purpose because I know him. He says, what is the average budget needed to even consider having a decent live recording?
Wow. Okay. It's a little bit difficult to say because,
or a baseline, I should say,
because it depends on, if you were to call me and say that, it's hard to know unless I know, well, where is it? How far do we have to travel? How much fuel is going to be required to get a truck there? Do we want to bring the full rig on a truck? Do we want to bring like a small system that we can, what do you already have in place that we can tie into? Like, there's a lot of questions that need to be answered. How many days are we on site? Depending on what we're bringing, how many people are going to be with me? There's a whole lot of variables that go into that. So that's really, really difficult to say. If we were bringing our full-on rig and you're just asking what our card rates are basically on that, a full-on system rig would be anywhere between, because I don't know the size, we don't know how many inputs, we don't know how many,
Just a blind shot.
$3,000 to $5,000
Okay.
as a basis for the system that we bring in.
Yeah.
There's going to be day rate on top of that for engineering,
Yeah.
assistance, driver,
Yeah.
things like that. That are hard costs.
Yeah.
Things that we can't do anything about. Hotels, if there's a flight involved, these are all hard costs. So if those mount up, and if it's something where they're working on a really restricted budget, I go back to that base cost, that it's a single, it's not a per day thing.
Yeah.
And I see where I can help out on things like that. But that gives you a
good baseline,
kind of an idea. Yeah, there's just so many things into that it's difficult to say.
Good. Okay. Well, that's really good. My guy, Bobby Allen says, what's the best way to record a big choir to get them without bleed of other instruments and other lead in choir mics? So I guess it's basically, like, how do you deal with, I think that's a good point to make. How do you deal with bleed? What is your approach to dealing with bleed? Because there's also drums to think about. There's other instruments. There's, crowd mics and all those. What is your approach to just dealing with bleed in general? I think that'll probably
all right. This is there's a lot to this question, actually, because I know what he's asking. And that's one of the most difficult when we have a choir, and usually right below the choir is a drum kit, and we have amps, and and if the choir is up against a drum kit, the choir will never win. It's pretty difficult. So depending on how your choir is arranged, I like it when a choir is arranged in sections, because I like to get, multiple mics on a section, and so later we can control how much we have of the tenors versus our sopranos and our altos, and most choirs do set up that way. I try to get the mics, depending on the size of the choir, anywhere from 2 to 4 mics per section, sometimes 6, if it's a large choir, even up to like 6 mics per section. And I'm gonna get those mics as close as I can to the choir. So that I get as much as I can out of the choir. And a lot of times I'm not choosing like real fancy condenser mics on that, because as fancy as they are, they also are going to be there. You think of every mic you're adding for the choir is going to be a drum mic, basically. So
that's good.
I'll tell you what I have had a lot of success with when it's a lot of drum bleed. I will get SM58s down as close into the choir as I can, even put them on stands right in. If you can't hang them above, get them as close as you can, because they really sound good on anything that's near them. But if things are not near them, they don't, they're pretty good at rejecting what is off axis of something like an SM58. You don't have to go spend a load of money. They're $100 each. So they work really, really well in some cases, where you have to use dynamic mics on your choir. But getting them as close as you can. But that's another thing, depending on your choir, that you really have to be careful of phasing, because you can end up with a lot of mics really close to each other, and you have to check phasing between each mic and then that pair against the next mic to make sure that it's not canceling each other out. If it is, you can raise those choir mics as loud as you want, and it's never going to get louder. So there's another thing that a good friend of mine, you may know Armando Fullwood.
I've heard of him.
He's in Charlotte.
Really?
He's in Charlotte.
No, I didn't know he was in Charlotte.
His company has something called Choirflex, and it's a brand new product. Shameless plug, I should say.
That sounds dope.
It's called Choirflex, and it is a piece of technology that sits in a rack. And you can run the choir mics through them, and it actually, the longer you use it, it learns the ambience of the room and knows what drums are, knows what, and the longer you use it, the better it gets, and it starts erasing anything that is not a choir from that signal, and it actually works. Yeah.
You need to check that out.
It's I'll try to get you some info on it.
Give me some info on it.
And then
and then we can connect with him since he's in Charlotte.
I'm sorry to make this a long thing, but I'm going to say this about bleed as well.
Like a major thing.
I'd never approach a live recording of like, hey, let's isolate everything and eliminate all bleed. I'm not all that concerned about it unless it's going to be like a problem, meaning a guitar player that hasn't practiced. All of a sudden, we can't have that guy bleeding into our choir mics or any other mics for that matter. But it's very rare on the stuff that I do that's happening. So some bleed is inevitable, and I'm not afraid of it, and I am not trying to eliminate it. And because a lot of times, that is part of the sound of what's happening on the stage. I'm not trying to get a kick mic with no snare in it or a snare with no hat. Or if you stand in front of a drum kit, you're not hearing individual drums. You're hearing one instrument, a drum kit, and it's the combination of all of it, the combination of the resonance of the kit itself in the overhead. It all becomes one sound on one instrument. So I think of live recordings the same way. Like, let's think of this as one instrument that is put together into one sound. Part of that sound is some of the bleed that happens in a mic that may be 20 feet away, that, it gives you the illusion of space. If you know how to use it, all of a sudden you've listened to recordings, it sounds like feel like you're in the room, and it's, that's
use it to your advantage.
Use it to your advantage. So I'm not necessarily trying to eliminate all forms of bleed.
Okay. So that's so good. My guy Sean McLean says, what's the best volume DB solution for multi-tracking a live recording with a full band, vocals, and crowds? I guess maybe like a target. Do you have a target DB that you're trying to stay in range?
I do, and so we talked earlier. I come from analog days, and you can always tell people that come from because the goal was always like, let's get this signal as hot as we can before feedback, because it was noise floor, and we're working with we want to get as hot of a signal as we can, so that the signal is hot and we have no noise.
No noise.
That's not the case anymore. So. It's hard to get yourself off of that. Like, I want to see that thing almost hitting yellow sometimes, and I had to work myself out of that with digital recordings. Yeah. So anywhere from about -18 to -10 dB is a really good area to be for your target it comes in. And a lot of times when I get mixes to do, people send me mixes, I will either actually trim these down or throw trims on them, and I try to get my tracks to come back to around -15 before I start mixing. Really? So a lot of times I just record them at that
space
as well. So if you look at plugins or whatever you're using when it comes to mixing, some of them are looking for levels that don't exceed -10 sometimes, and it opens up the sounds of the plugins actually.
Interesting.
A lot more. So that's a good question actually.
Really?
That was a really good question.
Yeah, really good question, because that was something I was thinking about as well. Okay, so my guy Michael Bradford says again, he says, what was this is a good one, I think. You can tell me. And if you don't want, you can plead the fifth. You can plead the fifth on this if you need to. But he says, what was the greatest recording experience you had, and what was the worst experience you would have if you had to put them in there? Now, if you need to plead the fifth.
I'm going to plead the fifth on the second one.
Okay.
But I'm glad Michael asked this, and I get this all the time, and I can tell you the best and one easily, but because I get this question a lot, it's not going to be what you're wanting to hear, but I'm going to tell you anyway. My mentality is the greatest, most important recording is the whatever you're working on. I know what Michael was wanting to hear me say, but and it's not a trick thing. I'm not just trying to say, but it has to be whatever you're currently working on.
Yeah.
Whatever you've done in the past, whatever I did yesterday or years prior, it does not matter.
That's
the only thing that matters right now is this. This has to be the most fresh sounding. It has to sound unique. And I have to approach this like this is the most important thing that I have ever done. And I keep myself saying to stay in the mentality of like, this is how important this one is. And it doesn't matter who it is or where it is.
Yeah.
This is the most important thing. And we have to treat it like it is. And that, you'll end up with something that sounds unique, something that is sounding fresh and not just, sounding like something else.
Yeah.
I know that's not what he was wanting to hear. I could
good.
tell you a bunch of them that
that you really like.
Lots of fun on, but really, I really do. I try to keep that in the front of my brain. Like the best is what I'm working on right this second.
Okay, the last one is really not a question. It's actually a statement, and it's from someone you know. It's from Shelton Morgan.
Oh, Shelton.
And Shelton says, "No questions. Danny is great. Tell him I said hello."
Oh, man. Hi, Shelton. Oh my gosh, I haven't seen him in a while. I need to see Shelton.
I need to.
He's great as well. So,
amazing.
man, are you kidding? I think he's the one that I should be saying that.
Gosh,
Shelton is great.
Shelton is amazing. I've been trying to connect with him. It's funny. We was talking like some months back, and it's like, oh yeah, man. I went to school in Nashville, area Murfreesboro, MTSU. I was like, from Tennessee, man. I'm right up the road. Grew up in Jackson. He's like, really? And then I moved out to Charlotte. He just moved to Atlanta. And then we're talking, and I'm like, yes. He's like, so where are you at? I was like, I'm in Charlotte. He's like, oh, I just left there. How long have you been in Charlotte? He's like, I've been in Charlotte. I was in Charlotte for 13 years. I was like, you just left? I've been there for almost 7 years. And
you're following him around. You didn't even know.
I'm following him around. I was like, and we literally keep missing each other by that much in terms of like a natural connection. But definitely going to get him in. But I appreciate your time.
Oh man,
I know the community appreciates the information, and we're going to do this again and again and again and again.
Yeah, let's do it.
And really get into doing some of the getting into the details in the process and showing it, because we can talk about it, and some people they gain knowledge from just listening to people talk about it, but some people are hands-on kinesthetic. They
very much.
See it.
It makes a lot of sense when you see it happening and and hear it as you see it, and then it makes the connection. Yeah.
And so I definitely want to do that. We were talking about some stuff off camera that we're going to try to put together. So I'm excited from what we're going to develop from this. But ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, Danny Duncan, we got a chance to hang out with him, and I'm so excited. I'm so much grateful that he allowed us into his space, and we got some other stuff that's going to be that we're going to get from him, and we're going to do that. But man, tell them those who just want to connect with you, let them know how to connect with you.
My Instagram is The Real Danny Duncan. I think on Facebook it's just Danny Duncan, but at The Real Danny Duncan on Instagram. It's not near as pretentious as it sounds. If we get tense on the next one, I'll tell you why. It's the real Danny Duncan. It's actually a pretty funny story. And for emailing, if there's things with Vanguard Recording, that's my live recording company, Danny@vanguardrecording.com is the email address, or Danny@DannyDuncan.com for general email.
Love it, man. Well, thank you guys for hanging out with us. Feel free to check out any of the other stuff that we've got. We got some more stuff coming up with Danny. I'm really excited to show you guys. It may already be out depending on when you're watching it. So if it is, go check that stuff out. We'll talk to you guys on the next one. Out.
Thanks, everybody.
I'll let you boy.
Bye-bye.
Yo, thank you for watching that exclusive clip from the Hangout Podcast. If you're interested in seeing more of these exclusive interviews that we have, make sure you check out the playlist over here. If you're interested in taking your production, mixing, or whatever to the next level, make sure you hit the links down below in the description. All right, we'll talk to you guys on the next one. I'm out. Holla at your boy.